Hey everyone, this is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and this video is a follow-up to my previous video to cover a pretty obvious line that I didn't cover at all. So thanks to eBoodum for your helpful comment. He mentioned this line, and I started to look at it, and it was just so interesting and cool. I had to post this as a follow-up. So in the game that I played with my opponent, I had just played bishop a6, hitting the queen, and if the queen moves, which happened in the game, then you can just mate immediately on f2. So that's not the solution, of course. But eBoodum mentions, and one of the reasons that I kind of just said in the video that white probably just has to give up the queen either with taking immediately or playing d4 to cut off this battery, is because that's what Stockfish said. But it's a good idea to understand why the computer's recommending to just give up the queen, because it's usually either to avoid mate or even more material loss. That's the case here, but I just kind of took it for granted, and I didn't look at some obvious play here that white could do to try to fight on. So eBoodum mentioned that white could play d3 with the idea of, after bishop takes, that the queen could park here on d2 and just keep an eye on this critical f2 square, because obviously if black were able to take here, it's not immediately mate right now because the king has one more square, but it's not looking good. So, well, it would be mate if the queen cut off the king and went to d1. But the problem with all of this with queen d2 is that it can't sit there for very long. Actually, it gets kicked immediately, and the only square to really go to keep an eye on f2 is f4, and here the queen gets kicked again immediately, and well, here. Okay, at some point, probably here, white could insert this check, trying to get rid of this temporarily, at least for one move, get this battery off his back so that the queen can move to another square for a second, and maybe white will have a chance to get some kind of consolidation and try to defend. But black doesn't even have to take this. He can just play king f8. And you know your opponent's in a lot of trouble if he can just calmly play this move and have no consequences for it. Cutting in his own rook, so we're sort of down this piece, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces actively attacking. This knight is currently hitting the queen, and in one move can come pretty close to the king, so I'd still even count that as part of the attack, even though it's on the rim. And this bishop, assuming it's not taken by this rook, assuming it's not taken by white's bishop, which it won't be, is going to be able to come into the attack in one move as well, so this piece is also attacking. So we have 6 pieces here. White has 2 pieces defending, and currently doesn't even have a chance to make a defensive move because he's got to save the queen. So yeah, after king f8, the queen is hit, and if the queen wants to keep an eye on f2 still, then she's got 2 squares. If she goes to h4, we can just play g5. Doesn't matter if this knight is taken, because once the queen's off f2, then this check is deadly. And you know, if there's, well, we even have rook d1 setting up discoveries and all these pieces attacking. It's going to be mate in short order. So yeah, h4 is probably even a quicker demise. So probably f5 is the only other way to keep an eye on this square. But then we have this cool move e3, hitting the queen and uncovering yet another attacker on f2. The queen could take either of these pieces, but probably this bishop has to be taken. It's too threatening, it's too aggressive into the position, and accompanied with the other bishop was just too dominating. So that can be taken, but we have this check here, and no matter where the king goes, it's going to be destruction. If the king goes here, we have the immediate loss of the queen, and actually it's mate to follow. The queen has the rook here. And if the king comes out, in this case we probably can take the bishop here, and the idea is that we want to be able to check on e1, and the bishop had that square. White could move the knight out, or he could take this, but either way we're going to get this check in, and it's going to be pretty nasty things to follow. Both of these files are open. At some point we're going to be able to take this knight, probably with check, or be able to queen. For example, well, if the king goes here, it's mate in 1. If the king goes back here, we can play this check, king out. We're queening here, which is even better than taking the knight. Has to give up the queen, and probably this rook is going to be lost too because the queen is hitting g2 and the knight is pinned, so more material losses are coming. And then we still have pieces attacking, we still have our queen out. We have checks here on g6 and e4 with the queen. Our rook is keeping the other pieces at bay. If we really need our other rook, we can bring it out, but probably we won't even need it for a while, if at all. So we've seen that the king can't go here, and the king probably can't come out, so the only other square is to go to f1. And here, at the very least, we can just take this. This is probably even the best move. We can take this rook because this rook is immune due to the f2 mate. So the queen has to cover this, probably queen e2. At least it's a safe distance away from the knight to avoid forks, and it covers this square. And here I had thought immediately like that this would be a killer move because we're threatening mate here on g1, and we're also threatening this fork on the king and the queen. But actually the game can continue a little bit if the queen just takes this, because now the queen was able to move away from the defense of the square because I took the battery away. So black should actually be a little more precise here, and instead of taking immediately, can play rook d1, and the idea here is deflection, just to play this check and get the queen away from the mating square. So white would probably have to play g3 to give the king an escape square. We're still going to play this check. This can't be taken because of mate, so the king has to run. And you know this is bad if the king has to run. So here we can take this bishop with check, which after all that, the bishop wasn't even able to take that rook and got taken with check. And here the king is running, we're attacking, probably the queen just has to block here, and we can even just trade, it doesn't matter at this point. At the very least we can take this bishop, probably be able to take this pawn. The king's in the middle of the board, this knight can't move due to the pin, so probably at some point we might even be able to just take one of these pieces. Probably one of these two pieces is going to be lost. So this might be the longest that white could have survived, but in order to save the queen, he got, let's see, what do we have here? Knight and rook. So we have a rook, a knight, a bishop, probably a pawn, and probably one of these pieces. So we'll probably end up with like 4 pieces. So that was what white would have had to pay to save the queen if he didn't fall into one of the other quicker mates. And of course white's getting mated in the end anyway. So these pawns aren't going to be nearly enough to save them, because we easily can bring our rook over, bring our king over, and stop these pawns, and at the same time these pieces, one of them is going to have to be given up. So yeah, I think that this is a really cool variation to look at. So it was a good point, Ba4. Thanks again for your comment that d3 could be played. It was pretty clear that it could have been played, and I didn't look at it at all. So I'm glad that you put that on there. And it was a lot of fun to look at these lines and just see, like, for example, how long this bishop could sit on c6 and just couldn't ever take this rook, and how many lines where the queen is just lost, or like so much material had to be given up. And in all of the variations that we just looked at, none of these pieces were able to move in all of those variations at all. So I thought that was also pretty cool. There's probably one variation that I didn't look at where the king is running around here on the second rank, and either the bishop or the knight had to block a rook check here on e2, but then by that point there was just so much material that could pile up on this, because black still has a dark square bishop, so there was pins there. This knight that was sitting on the rim was able to jump into the game, and yeah, there's more pieces were lost in basically every variation. White was down to like 1 or 2 pieces. So yeah, just total and utter destruction, and all of this started by a couple inaccurate moves in the opening. But this is part of the problem when you allow black a ton of activity and you don't play the best move where you're putting your bishop back. I am going to look a little bit more at the correct bishop retreat of bishop d3, and this is better for white, and I think there are some GMs out there that just claim that white's winning here and black's lost. I think it's probably a lot closer than that, but yeah, I think this might be eventually the reason that I stopped playing the Polaria, but for now I'm having a lot of fun with it. So take a look at that in another video, but for now I hope that you enjoyed some of these attacking lines, and I'll see you around.